I am back with another episode of the historical menstruation series. Hi everyone. So I need to start this video immediately by saying that we don't actually know for certain if medieval women wore underwear or not. There's written documentation of them owning and wearing them, but we don't have actual material evidence. And any visual evidence can be argued for and against. This is actually a surprisingly heated topic in medieval reenactment circles. If you want to get into an argument with a bunch of people, then start talking about whether or not medieval women wore braids. It's also just nice for a fun little educated debate. We all love one of those. I personally think that they did wear them, with my own experience now wearing historical clothing daily for many years at this point. I personally love wearing medieval braids at reenactments and find them extremely comfortable and also just necessary because there's still things like discharge even when you're not having menstruation, so things just come out. So all in all, medieval underwear used for the purpose of menstruation is heavily based on conjecture, as well as a few sources that I found really interesting and I felt could be interpreted in this manner. But I truly feel that historical plausibility is an essential part of experimental archaeology, otherwise we simply will never know. And trying out plausible ideas also gives us deeper insight, which can then help other people in the future interpret new discoveries. So this is really important, and I don't think we should shy away from plausibility just because we don't have some sort of material garment evidence of something, especially if there's plenty of documentation of things around this. In this video, I'll be using the terms medieval women and medieval females, not because I personally think that women are the only people that menstruate, but because during this period in time and the region in the world, which in this case, I'm going to be covering Western, Northern Europe, a bit of Southern Europe as well, people did very much see gender on a binary, and so that's why we're going to be talking in this way in this video. Now, the medieval period is massive, around 1,000 years, and it covers a bunch of territories. So if you would like to learn about medieval women's potential underwear, I don't know why it sounds so funny to say it that way, but that's the most accurate way I can think to say it. I highly recommend a video by the creative Contessa, who very brilliantly puts into words a lot of my thoughts surrounding the matter, as well as covers some pretty awesome sources. She went so much deeper into this, and my own video would not have been possible without her brilliant work, so do go and watch that video if you're curious. In her video, the creative Contessa mentions one specific piece of textual evidence from a will where there is listed a linen pair of braids lined with cotton batting, belonging to an Italian woman by the name of Lucia Contata Amoese in 1348. Hopefully I pronounced that name correctly. I found this extremely intriguing and suddenly began to wonder if this may have potentially been an incontinence or even a menstruation garment. And so that specific moment in the video when I saw it last year immediately piqued my interest, and I knew I needed to run a little experiment of my own. So I decided to create my own historically plausible reconstruction from there. I felt like most likely if menstruation undergarments were being worn, they were probably based on the braids that men were wearing. Why fix what isn't broken after all? And if this was a style already prevalent, and you can see in the creative Contessa's videos all these different wills and examples of where women are being handed over braids, there doesn't seem to be a huge divide between the genders in regards to this, at least with regards to passing on these articles of clothing. I got to drafting right away utilizing this late medieval braids drafting guide from the Medieval Tailor's Assistant, which is an absolutely brilliant book. And this is a style where it isn't very gathered at the waist, and then there's a gusset inserted, so the crotch part doesn't get bunched up that much. And I wanted this because in the past I've used historical menstruation garments with a lot of bunched up fabric. I think the best example I can give is the 18th century menstruation aprons. The gathering of fabric at the crotch can work very well, but with this specific experiment, I really wanted to have a section that I could fill up with batting, not necessarily by utilizing the excess fabric to catch the blood. I cut this extra piece of linen to create essentially a little pocket at the crotch where I'm going to add some fill to make it more absorbent, and I'm going with wool because I actually think that wool would have been more accessible, especially in parts of Northern and Western Europe, than cotton would have been, because cotton was super expensive actually at this point in time. I spent the entire evening and night hand sewing all the pieces together until the wee hours of the morning, and finally the braids were done. So late last night I ended up finishing my braids. and I think they turned out so nice. I really like this gusset design because I feel like there's just a lot less fabric bunching at the crotch area. I'm having a little bit of a break before I continue on with things, and I wanted to mention the sponsor of this video, which is June's Journey. June's Journey is a free-to-download hidden object detective mystery game that takes place in the 1920s. So it's full of atmosphere and beautiful vintage illustrations. I love to play this game to unwind a little bit whilst still feeling engaged and immersed in a captivating story, which follows the life of June Parker, a sharp amateur detective who's on a mission to discover the secrets of her sister's murder, uncovering numerous long-buried family secrets and many unexpected twists and turns. As the chapters progress, so does the depth of the storyline. You also get to design and decorate your very own island, and I think that mine looks so cute. I've been working on it for a very long time now. Currently, the game gives you the chance to be a part of an exciting experience where June Parker is joined by Hercule Poirot, the legendary detective from Agatha Christie's novels, for a series of special in-game events. These new mysteries are based on books such as Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile, and The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. I really admire many female authors of the early 20th century, including Agatha Christie, because they paved the way for other women to get more recognition for their work during a time when this was extremely challenging and also a brave endeavor. The new Agatha Christie experience in-game means immersive stories, new cases to solve, and exclusive rewards and island decorations to collect from April until June. Download June's Journey for free by clicking the link or scanning the QR code. June's Journey is available on iOS and Android smartphones and tablets, as well as on PC. Now I'm going to go and have a cup of tea and relax and maybe play a little bit of June's Journey, and then I'm going to start to stuff the crotch area here with the menstruation wool material. I had to really think about what material I wanted to use to stuff the crotch area of these braids to make sure that they would absorb as much menstrual blood as possible. So I decided to go with a couple of pieces of scrap wool from a shift I made a while back. This is a really nice woven wool, and I cut it to size so that way it would fit into the gusset pocket. Then I took some of this raw wool, which is great for felting. This one's already been washed, and the reason I wanted to use a washed wool one is because ones that are richer in lanolin I think would have the property of deflecting any liquid that would be absorbed into them, so I felt like having a washed version would then make it so that the inside part would be more absorbent. At least that was my logic here. I basically just put this in between the two layers of wool and sandwiched it together, as you can see here, and then I used my hand to stuff it into the pocket that I made. I ended up just leaving the pocket open because everything is basically cut to the exact same size, so nothing shifts around that much, and then I was done. So here I am in my 14th century style breeches with all of the wool and everything stuffed at the crotch area for the menstruation element. And I think they're really nice, they're super comfortable, and it also feels like a ton of padding. This feels by far like way more padding than anything I experienced with either the Stone Age menstruation garment that I made or the ancient Roman one. So yeah, I think this is off to a really great start. We're gonna run some tests soon to see how great it actually is at absorbing things. Yeah, I wanted to do a little turnaround so you can see how it is. And normally my shift or smock would be over this, and I'd wear these without the smock in the way, for obvious reasons, since everything needs to actually be able to drip onto the padded area and not just get soaked up by my shift. But just for a little bit more modesty, I actually put my shift into the garment for now to be able to show you. And they stop at right about here on my legs, so just above my knee. I got the size down pretty well, I think. There would be even more space if the smock was off, because then there would just be less fabric in the way. During the 13th, 14th, and 15th centuries, you kind of get three distinct style of breeches. You get the very large, spacious ones, which you see in earlier periods, like the 13th century. Then you get this style that are smaller with a gusset, and you get this from, I think, the 14th century onwards, from the medieval period. And then finally, you get these really short breeches, which almost look like tighty-whities. And those essentially go on from about 1350 into the 15th century. And the reason why these exist is actually because men at some point in the late 14th century start wearing joined hose, which means that now they can't really deal with all the bulk underneath their hose because there is like no space there, so everything ends up being stitched together, and they need something a little bit more form-fitting to be able to be practical and comfortable. So we'll say that this is sort of a 14th century style, which works because I normally wear about 14th century medieval clothing anyways for reenactment. At the moment my menstruation is a little bit lighter, so I actually wanted to run a proper test on this, and so that way you wouldn't just have to take my word for it. So I decided to actually try out the garments with some corn syrup and water mixture, so that way we can really put this garment to the test and see how it actually could handle a large amount of menstrual blood. In this case, fake menstrual blood, because yeah, I can't actually show that on YouTube. So let's go over to where I've set up a little lab and we can start the experiment. As you can see here, I've got my little lab set up. So a few facts about menstruation. Typically, menstruating people lose around 30 to 40 milliliters of blood per period. So it's actually not as much as you might think, though there is of course people who have much heavier flows and lighter flows. It really depends person to person. But generally we're not losing like 200, 300 milliliters per period. That would be really a lot of blood and probably something that would need to be seen by a doctor. So that means for today's experiment, I'm going to be mixing some things together in order to try and replicate the consistency of periods. The only thing is that I can't actually make anything red because of YouTube guidelines. Very often they will demonetize or force you to censor anything that seems like graphic content. And sadly, menstruation blood can sometimes get categorized into that place, which is really unfortunate because this is educational material and it shouldn't be a taboo, but it is. If you're currently watching this on Nebula, I'm very sorry, but I will be using blue food coloring as well for Nebula because I don't want to do the experiment twice. So I have blue today, which is the thing that you typically see in all of the menstruation product commercials in the world. I feel like it's always blue liquid, and I thought about using yellow, but I was worried that YouTube would then think it was urine. So yeah, we're going with blue liquid today. And I've got my Pyrex here, which I'm going to be filling up with some liquid to be able to start the experiment. So I actually want to start by seeing how well the garment can handle a more extreme amount of liquid. First things first, I've got some corn syrup here and I'm going to add it into this Pyrex glass. Probably that much is good. It's so sticky. I've not bought corn syrup in years because I don't really use it for anything or eat it. So I kind of forgot what it's like. It's definitely a little too thick of a consistency for menstrual blood, so I'm going to add in just a little bit of water. I'm going to stir it and try and get a more realistic heavy flow day consistency. And I'll add in the food coloring now as well, so that way you all can actually see what is going on. See if I can get it quite intense color, so that way you can really see what's happening. Yeah, that kind of looks like blue menstrual blood. Even got some chunks in there of the food coloring. It's a little bit too thin now, I would say, so I'm going to add in just a little bit more corn syrup. You know, periods vary so much in consistency, so there's no one consistency fits all, but I'm kind of just gauging it off of the consistency I normally have for my heavy flow days. So I think this consistency is pretty good. It's a little bit liquidy, but sometimes menstrual blood can get a bit liquidy like that, so I don't think that that's too far off. I've got just about 85 milliliters in here. So let's do the fun part now and pour it onto the garment and see what happens. Just to have a little bit of a real life reference, this is a brand new menstrual disc, which is essentially an alternative to the menstrual cup. And this is meant to hold about, I believe, 4 tampons worth of blood. And typically these need to be changed every 8 to 12 hours, I believe. So they are good for kind of most of the day coverage, and then usually we'll change them once. So I'm going to actually fill this material up into the cup and see how it compares. Now, when you lose menstrual blood, you're not only losing blood itself, which is why this amount is about 85 milliliters, and it just about fills up the cup. That would be if it were purely blood. The blood also is mixed in with tissue and other things like that, so that's why it seems kind of small for an average period amount, but specifically 30 to 40 milliliters is blood loss and not including uterine tissue and things like that. I would say for myself, if I had this much blood in my cup, then I would say I have a fairly medium to heavy flow. So this would be pretty usual for me, I think, for a very heavy day, for myself personally. So let's go ahead and pour it onto the material and see what happens. Now we have to keep in mind, normally I've got gravity working for me here if I'm wearing it. And so I'm going to just kind of cup it a little so it doesn't just fall off of the garment, which is exactly what it did. Okay, I'm gonna let it just absorb a little. Typically when menstrual blood actually falls into your garment, it does it little by little, and it also usually has a tiny bit of time to absorb. I'm guessing probably as well the corn syrup is not helping with the absorption. But let's just see if I were to help it a little. It's definitely never as elegant as in the commercials. Okay, so now I've poured all 85 milliliters on here, and because it's the corn syrup, it's having a little bit of a hard time absorbing into the material, which is to be expected because it's not menstrual blood. But I'm going to just let this sit here now for the next hour or so and wait as it does its thing, and I'm gonna see if it goes through to the other side or not, to see if essentially there would be leakage. Now, obviously, in some areas there is leakage because it's spilled off to the just linen part, but that's kind of expected. So if there's only one layer, naturally there's going to be leakage. But I want to see if this big part here where everything is absorbing into has leakage or not. I also wonder if this food coloring is going to come out of the garment or if I'm just going to have blue stained braids now for a while, but that's okay if I do. So it has now been about 1.5 hours since this all got poured onto this garment, and I'm actually just gonna take the layers apart. So as you can see, any places where there's just linen, you do get leakage on to the other side. Oh, it actually went all over my table, so I need to clean that up. Hopefully that doesn't leave too much of a mark, but that's just in areas where things ended up spilling off, as you can see. So just the linen alone is not enough to be able to absorb. Let's take a look now. The inside, as you can see, the first layer of wool here has quite a lot of saturation, but what do you see here? Almost nothing, absolutely nothing actually. The only thing that happened was some of the leakage. So this one layer of wool alone was enough to absorb 85 milliliters of this liquid, which is pretty impressive in my opinion. And as you can see, this is not affected, and neither is the bottom layer here. So yeah, I'm quite impressed, to be fair. I'm really excited about these results because it means it will work for menstrual blood as well, as even a very, very heavy flow, as you can see. Because yeah, it didn't even leak out onto the other side here. Almost, but it hasn't. I'm going to throw this garment into the wash, and then tomorrow I'm going to reassemble it and wear it myself for the day. Now, as I mentioned, my period is a little bit lighter this time around, so it won't really get to work to its full extent, but I'll give it a try anyways, and that's mainly why I wanted to show you all of it here like this. So tomorrow I'll mainly be focused on how comfortable it is and whether or not things are somewhat working, but this is its true potential. Blue liquid and all. It's really giving me the vibes of some commercials. Well, that wraps up this little experiment, and now let's see how things go tomorrow. So it is now the next day, and under here, I've got my, underneath the shift, my braids, as you can see. So I'm mainly going to be going off of whether or not it's comfortable to wear these for many hours and whether or not it gets annoying or something, including with some of the padding that's there. So far so good, it feels comfortable because I already know that the material is extremely absorbent, as we saw in yesterday's experiment. One thing I am noticing right away though is that for sleep time or for any time when you're like sitting, I probably should have extended the pocket on the gusset because that seems to need a bit more length. I think I made it a little bit too short. So I feel like that might be a problem in the future, but for the time being, this seems okay. So far it feels comfortable, everything's staying put, and I think I got the size right, and I'm gonna keep on checking in throughout the day and see how it goes. I'm just about to go to bed, but it's been about 10 hours since I've been wearing these medieval menstruation braids. And I have to say that it works incredibly well. Comfort-wise, I basically forgot most of the day that I was even wearing braids. It's way more comfortable than modern underwear by far. And I think the fact that my menstruation was lighter trying out this garment is maybe more accurate for medieval times because there's a lot of factors in history that likely influenced menstruation. For instance, malnourishment and working hard labor jobs. And yes, women also did used to work in history and worked hard labor jobs, and then often had to go home and also raise children on top of that, working another full-time job. So they worked extremely hard all throughout history. Also things like pregnancy and nursing, which can produce prolactin, which can make some people not have menstrual cycles, though it isn't the case for everybody. It really depends on the person, but it is common that it tends to stop menstruation. I think out of all the historical menstrual garments that I've tried, this so far has been the most effective. I mean, you saw it in the cornstarch fake blood pouring test. It didn't even go through to the inner layer between the two pieces of wool material. So yeah, this seems to be very effective at catching blood and any menstrual fluids. I'm going to be sewing quite a few more pairs of these braids, I think, and also maybe incorporating them into my usual menstruation wear because I'm just really happy with it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video and this experiment as much as I did. And thanks so much again to June's Journey for sponsoring this video. Be sure to go and download June's Journey for free by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code here on screen. Alright everyone, well, I will see you all in 2 weeks for another video. Bye!